Oh, crap.
Yep, okay, I'll call the meeting to order by saying the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our special meeting, special commissioners meeting to hold discussion and take a vote on the jail today, on the new jail today. Just a reminder, we are on Zoom, so if you would get my attention to speak so that we can conduct an orderly meeting. And with us this morning, we do have some individuals from the Samuels group. I'm not sure who is all on, I guess. Maybe we can get that clarified.
It looks like it's.
Dave Scholl with Elevatus Architecture.
Okay, so we have Dave Scholl with Elevatus, and I'm gonna see if we can get the volume turned up a little bit.
I wonder if we're using this then, right? Can you try again?
Yeah, Dave Scholl with Elevatus.
Okay, great. Welcome, Dave. And I can't see, do we have anyone else on it?
Sid Samuels of the Samuels Group.
Okay, good morning, Sid. Welcome.
Good morning.
Paul Laney with Elevatus.
Good morning, Paul. Anyone else?
And I'm Autumn Newville. I'm with Samuel's group also.
Who's that? Can you repeat your name?
Autumn Newville, and I'm with Samuel's group also.
Okay, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Is that everyone? Okay, it sounds like we have everyone here. So as I stated, we are having a special meeting today to discuss the potential new jail. It was presented at our last regular meeting. The Samuels Group, Sid from Samuels Group presented all the information on the jail. Everyone had time to take it home and review it this past week. So I guess at this point, I would just open it up to any questions that there are.
One question I have, and I don't know who should address this, but I I'd like a little understanding of where the number of 40 inmates came from. It is a projection.
Sure, I can answer that. We had actually hired Tom Weber from Weber Associates, I believe is his company. And his job is really, or what he does is goes around the United States, works with various counties to come up with bed counts, looks at operations. So what he did, if you look at his study, it was produced, and I think we were on it for almost 9 months. And he had worked with the jail administration, looked at all your guys' records, looked at what was coming in for bookings, and put all that information together to come up with the 44 or the 48 beds.
Yes,
I remember in the beginning, how much effort and work Ron and Adam, they were manually looking back and COVID and looking at, you know, daily intakes, and the process that they went through was from meals they served in the gym. I mean, they really had to go through a lot of research to determine an average. So I definitely didn't feel like the number came from out of anywhere. They put the effort in the beginning. That was like one of the first stages, was it not?
Yeah.
To try to get an accurate representation of our numbers over.
Unfortunately, the records weren't digital, so we had to go through hand logs, meal logs, bookings, and that's what took the most amount of time was that. But Tom, Adam, and I, and several others sat down, and it was an extensive process.
So you're, I don't wanna say growth, but an increase, you're sort of projecting too? Cause I don't know if we ever averaged 40, did we?
No,
Yeah, but because of the crime and the increase, you sort of looked into that coming up too, didn't you?
this is over 20 years, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think in addition to, you got to remember that we are also looking at classifications, which when you start looking at classifications and the types of inmates that we are putting in sections of the facility, it's going to demand more beds than, well, we'll say, the need, meaning because of the separations and putting different classifications into different pods, you may have 4 beds in there, but only have 2 people in there. It's the efficiencies of running that jail. So that's why we came up with the 40 beds out of the, you have a total of 48, but because of the inefficiencies of classifications, that's where you come in with the 80%. That brings you to the 40.
And we're currently unable to classify our prisoners, now, is that right?
We do a very poor job of classifying our inmates because of the restrictions of our facility, yes.
yes, Paul.
So Ron, you handed out this sheet this morning, and I appreciate these numbers, this Elevatus letter. Helps understand the limitations of the existing facility and remodeling the existing facilities based on this gentleman's opinion is really not an option.
And that's Dave Scholl, and he can answer any questions if you have some for him.
Oh, okay, I guess I didn't even notice that. I don't have any, I did have a chance to read it here this morning. This is helpful for me to understand the existing facility probably can't be remodeled. I also like your projections you have, you phased in the amount of inmates that we have. If I'm reading this correctly, then what you're saying is as you grow from 20 to 30 to 40, this 42 million is the number that it would cost over 20 years to transport and house.
That is correct. Well,
Plus the 12 million.
that is just the Grand Forks, so just to clarify that.
And one other item, that I don't believe is in this projection is the cost to replace vehicles if we're constantly transporting. And we see how expensive the cost of vehicles already are, so if we're also looking at constantly transporting, we're going to be replacing vehicles in the sheriff's department quite often,
That is correct.
so that would be another expense.
Correct.
Madam Chair, as I was reading through everything and just kind of going over my thoughts on this, and you know, it's, for me, I've always been in support of this pretty much from the beginning because of a little bit of the way I think. You know, when we remodeled our house at home, we did a big family remodel and I was, okay, how could this change in the future? We put some wires in walls, and because I knew I wanted to eventually put an entertainment center here, and you know, just like that image. So when Jason comes and talks with us about 3 separate units that are for heating and cooling, and the efficiency side of things, is just, to me, doesn't make a ton of sense. You know, when we're thinking of, well, we still are gonna have to put up a potential $12 million building, and then we're gonna also have to do something with HVAC. So we know that's at least 5 million. We're almost at half the cost, and we would have a small space and maybe a new HVAC for the courthouse. But then what happens with the other buildings when they start going? Like, there's just this bigger picture that I think in 20 years or even less, we're gonna say, this is the efficient way to go, and you don't always get those results now. There's a little bit of that leap of faith, if you will, but even as a business owner and a lifelong citizen of Walsh County, I see glimmers of growth. Like, I see things happening on our downtown, and which is exciting. I want us to be the, you know, I want us to be a leader in taking a stand for public safety. I don't want our servants of public safety to be doing on the road, you know, that we're paying them to transport for one, or that we're selling ourselves short, and that Samuel's Group has done a great job to prove the need that we have in this county. They've said straight up, some of these smaller counties don't need a jail, you know, that it wouldn't cost them much less to build. They don't recommend that they do. And in one of the first meetings we had, where I think it was Jennifer, the marketing and the social media, I get a vote is scary, but I was very impressed with what Samuel's Group showed us, what they have done, their history with votes. And I feel confident that we have the best shot at this with being aligned with the Samuel's Group.
Dennis,
I guess I look at the intangible factor of it, the toll that it's gonna take on our officers playing catch and release, the court system. The criminals that are gonna look at this like, there's no real consequences here. And to have that growth that you speak of, the first thing you have to have is law and order. And this is the cornerstone of our law and order in this county. And yeah, it's a big number. But I haven't talked to anyone that hasn't been in support of paying that price to get this done. And everyone that I've talked to said it's just like any other building project. It might seem larger than you need right now, but you'll need it in the future. And that's the part that I really look at. I had a break-in a number of years ago, I had a $5,000 deductible on my insurance policy. Cost me $5,000. I'll gladly pay that in taxes to have law and order. And I'm not gonna say it's gonna eliminate all of it, but if you don't have a deterrent for these people to take seriously, it's not gonna get any better. And you look at the cost of transporting, vehicles is one thing, but we're gonna need more officers, probably twice as many officers. But it's just that we can't afford not to do this. If we're gonna be a progressive county and growth, which we're trying to provide, the first thing you have to have is law and order.
Ernie,
I guess I got a couple questions on the funding. Is it, excuse me, it's hard to read some of these numbers, they're so small and everything else, but when the projected price or whatever, was there gonna be 5 million out of it, or I call it our kitty or piggy bank? So I guess I'm thinking in the line of whether it's sales tax or property tax. Sales tax, you had Park River just increased, you had Grafton just increased because of their parks or needs or whatever. There's a a bill introducing now for grants, isn't there, for the jails?
Yes, the legislature, yes.
So if we move forward with this, I guess my question is, do we have to decide today if we're gonna do a sales tax? If we could get a $10 million grant and go away from sales tax, I would love to do that. Cause I don't think we can get it to pass both the property tax one, the mill, or whatever you're gonna call the vote. So let's say I gotta pay $200 a quarter, or $100, or $99 on 100 on my house. I think we might be able to pass that, but if we shove that sales tax in there. And I don't wanna pick on Gafner Park River, but are they gonna support it? They've already been hit with their park board deal in this. So if we could eliminate that sales tax, I think we'd have a better shot at getting this thing moving too. And like I said, I don't know at what point or the grant is gonna come to, but I would sure like to see that sale tax go away and go with the grant and then our whatever funding, even if we have to take 10 million out of our cookie jar. We still got money left in there. I mean, we built that up so we always knew we were gonna have trouble or have to do something, and thank God we did. We've got that cushion in there and we can use it for something like this, but yeah, I don't know what your guys' opinion is, but boy, if we could see that sales tax go away, I'd feel a lot better.
That was one of my concerns as well, is the $10 million grant. We're not gonna know the result of that till after the legislative session.
Right.
And I agree with Ernie, that takes the sales tax off the table. Now you have one measure to pass, not two. I'm not opposed to this project. The funding worries me a little bit. I want to support law enforcement, but I don't know how we make a decision when there's a potential $10 million grant 3 months down the road. And how do you educate your public when you don't know if you're gonna have one question or two questions on the ballot? So that was one of my concerns as well.
Can I speak in regards to, or?
Okay, I guess going along with him is like, how are we gonna fund it? I get it, it's a giant project, but when I look at the 61 or 62 million it's gonna cost us for the new facility and transporting them, to me, it's no brainer. There's $20 different, or $20 million difference in 20 years. And another thing is, if this fails, how do we fund that? Out of our general fund? We don't. So where do we go? We eat at our surplus again, that's about the only thing we can do. I don't know, it's no matter which way we look, it's got a lot of money involved, but you got to look at both ends of it and see which one's better for the county. And no doubt, the building it looks a lot better than trying to provide this for 20 years and putting another building here for 12 million, that just a go through really.
There's also I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There's also legislation, the Attorney General wants to have mandated sentences for certain crimes. I don't know what exactly that looks like, but that would increase the demand for jails if that bill passes. So that's on the other side of the equation. We're gonna need more jail space, which would help support these projections, but we don't know if that's gonna happen yet either.
Ron?
Can I speak a little bit on the bills that you guys are referring to? One is the grant fund. And another one is a low interest loan fund. Both of those bills, we were in Bismarck testifying at, and an overwhelming theme by the legislators, when they were asking the questions from us is, where are you in the process? There are a lot of jails in the valley that are looking at a new facility. Devils Lake and Richland County were two that were represented. My fear is we slam the brakes on this process, and Devils Lake and Richland County are gonna pass us by, and we're not gonna be available for these. We're not gonna be at a point, because they asked the question, where are you in the process? How ready are you for this money? because in the language of it is, you have to be far enough in the process to be granted these funds. My fear is we've hit the brakes on this process and someone else is gonna pass us by and we're not gonna be available for that money. That's my concern.
And I was with Ron down at legislature as well testifying, and I fully agree with Ron, with what Ron is saying. We want to be first in line, not last in line. We need to be ready to go, hit the road running. And we did some checking, Tanya did some checking, and I don't mean to speak for you, Tanya, you can speak on your own behalf, correct me if I'm wrong. But we did some checking with bond counsel. And if we made the decision today, if the vote is passed to go forward with the new jail, and the wording on the ballot, it does not mean that if we say, 20 mils in property tax and 0.75% sales tax, it does not mean that we have to take all of that. We can go up to 20 mils, we can go up to 0.75%. So if the legislature does pass this, it still doesn't mean that we'll get 10 million. I mean, it's not just an automatic, here you go, here's a $10 million grant. You have to apply, you have to get in line, and you have to see how much you'll actually get. So I think we'll be in a much better position if we get this pushed forward. Pushed is not a good word. If we get this moved forward and we're ready to apply when those funds become available. I was also told down in Bismarck that, there is no guarantee those funds will be available. And yes, we hope that we hope both bills pass. We hope we can get a $10 million grant. We hope we can get the 40 million at a 2% interest rate, but there is not a guarantee that we'll get that. That's also up to 10 million, up to 40 million. So I firmly believe that it's better if we keep moving forward and we're prepared if those bills pass so that we can be first in line for the money. Amy.
Ron, when you say, or Chris, you either can answer, but you need to be at a certain point. What is that certain point? Do we know? Or just that they can show that we're planning to keep going, obviously, we're well ahead of any other counties at this point, I assume.
Yes. In reference, the Devils Lake, Ramsey County, Lake Region, jail. They had, proposals, they had, drawings, but they are not as far along in the process as we are. There has to, they talk about, support from your entity, and, I don't have the specifics of the bill in front of me, but it seemed to me that they wanted some buy-in from the county, whether that be a vote or something, to show that the process is moving along.
So if we could prove to them over the next few months, Samuel's group is working, we have a vote scheduled, etc., that would be, in your opinion, probably the
In my
place.
opinion, that puts us, in front of the line, in my opinion.
Paul.
So I just have a question for the architect from Novatus. The projection is 42 million on this project. For 48 beds. Is there any way to know, is there anything we could do differently to bring the price down? I don't know how else to ask my question.
The only way to bring the price down would be to reduce the size of the building, basically. That's the only way to do it. I mean, you can't use less expensive materials because it's a jail. A jail is a jail and it's got to be secure. So all the systems need to be in place. The hardened walls, the security systems that the staff use to operate the jail, all that's got to be in place. So the only way to reduce the cost would be to reduce the size of the jail. And the most expensive part of the jail is the housing and the intake and the kitchen. So those are all three essential parts. So if you reduce those, yeah, you could get the cost down, but then you're going to be cutting beds, which I think the number has already been justified as being necessary to meet your future needs.
So just as an example, if you build 25 beds now with the idea that you'd add 20 beds later, it would end up costing you more in the long run is what you would say, I'm assuming.
Well, it's going to cost you more in the long run. And the way that the jail is designed, you've got one central control point where an officer sits and views all of the beds. And right now it's laid out into 8 different classifications, which would be the minimum that you really need. So if you were to cut, yeah, I mean, if you were to cut, 20 beds out, it complicates the layout. And yes, you will pay more in 10, 15, 20 years, whenever you have to grow, to remobilize and build it. Nobody can project what inflation is, construction inflation. I mean, the last couple of years it's been in 6, 8, 10%, but now it's leveled back down to around 4% per year. But you really can't project into the future what that could be. So.
There's one other comment I'd like to make when you bring up the inflation about your guys' thought process on delaying a vote. The other thing we need to look at is every year we delay, we have that inflationary cost. So if we delay and wait another year, there's inflation, 6%, correct? 4 to 6%. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well.
Look what the cost of it was in Valley City. And we're what, six years behind them? We were doing the same thing and it's over doubled. I don't, if we're gonna do it, I don't wanna delay it. Let's move forward and do it. Inflation, we see it on our highway department and everybody else here. We can't keep up with that rate. Especially when our hands are tied when it comes to general fund and other monies. And I said, this is scary how much it's increased in just in the last 2 years. So, and we did look at one plan before, didn't we change sort of the plan of the building? It was out there, and then we sort of.
Well, Madam Chair, wasn't there, what jail did you start with? And that had been built fairly, was it Rich? No.
Valley City.
And that was one that they already had outgrown, or correct me, what, I remember in the beginning saying they would do it differently. I think it was Valley City,
Rollo.
had already kind of stretched where they didn't build.
Yeah, Jason.
Boston was one of them that they didn't put a kitchen in. So when the agreement that they had with the university quit supplying them food, so they actually had to close the jail for a while until they figured out another avenue to get food into the jail. So there's that aspect of it too, where do you need the kitchen? We need it because we don't know what the future holds. We can't do these different things. And if we can keep the cost down from feeding the inmates that we have by having a kitchen, I think we need to do that. We need to look forward to it. Do we have to right away? Maybe not, but we do have to have the space there for it. Otherwise, we're gonna get caught.
Any other questions? Paul?
One thing I was thinking of suggesting is, should we have another visit with Grand Forks County? I think it's been 2 or 3 years since you've been there. And I know Grand Forks County is in the process of adding 100 beds to their jail. They're 40 miles away. Is that worth pursuing? That means we transport everybody to Grand Forks. based on these numbers, this 41 million is transporting to Grand Forks. Ron, is that right?
Sorry,
This 41 million is transporting to
Yes.
Grand Forks?
yes, it is.
Plus, if you transport to Grand Forks, you need a holding facility, so.
Kelly?
May I kind of just respond to that? I know that Grand Forks has contracts with federal authorities. I know for a fact they had room for federal inmates this weekend. And they want those contracts because the feds pay more. And if, based upon the Trump administration's, shutdown, I would expect that the needs for those federal prisoners will go up and increase. And so I understand talking to Grand Forks, yeah, we should do that again. But I don't think they're gonna be interested. They haven't been interested before in our 20+ inmates. And I just don't foresee that, especially when they have federal contracts and that federal need is gonna be going up without a doubt. I think, anyway, that's my thought on that.
And when Trail came to one of our first meetings, that was also eye-opening to me, when Trail County came and was initially interested in having prisoners here. So Hillsborough in that area, they also could not get into Grand Forks. So I think that's telling in itself that there are counties around, Grand Forks has what they can handle and wants to handle. The counties around them are where the need lies.
Ron?
I think we have just in the near future have had 2 Trail County inmates for quite a period of time. The problem I see in Grand Forks, like Kelly described, is that wasn't the purpose of the addition to their jail, was putting those 90 beds in. It was to put an attendant care and a juvenile detention center in that jail, not. So I was flabbergasted when I heard that the governor was contacted about putting these beds in, because that was not the original design for that addition. So and when I contacted the administrator and asked him about bed space when they were going to build, he said, we would still not have enough room for you. I think it's been very clear on my part that we were still interested in exploring that option. I don't know that they have not. And I think it was Tom Folk was the portfolio for the jail at the time that we were talking. He wasn't interested either, so I don't know what would have changed that would change their minds. I know I've always kept that open, a line of talk open between him and me about contracting our prisoners. And he wasn't interested, so I don't know, he being the administrator. So I don't know what would have changed. Cause I haven't talked to him lately.
Well, they've got a couple new commissioners there, but that's probably the only thing that has changed.
And I guess my question to that would be, is the new commission saying that they would have room, or is there a jail administrator who has 15 years of experience, and the other 2 commissioners who have several years of experience? The only other comment I'd like to make in regards to that, Paul, is do we want to rent or do we want to own? You know, to me, I look at it as like we're renting space, right? If we go to Grand Forks, we're renting space, and at the end of 20 years, we have nothing. If we build, we own our building and we continue to own that building. Ron?
Could I have the judge or Bev maybe speak on the difficulties we've had with Grand Forks County in general, having our prisoners in Grand Forks? How difficult it is, to get hearings scheduled, how difficult it is to get our court-appointed lawyer applications back, how difficult it was to get fingerprints for our inmates.
Well, all of those things are accurate. They are by far the most difficult jail that we deal with in terms of trying to get our prisoners who are there, to make court appearances even by Zoom. And so sometimes in the end, it just ends up being, better to just have somebody go and pick somebody up and bring them back for a hearing, because it is very difficult. We don't get video feed from them anymore. We did for a while, now we don't anymore. Now we just get phone feed. That is also a very big issue for me. Because I need to be able, when I'm doing my hearings, to be able to see, look at and see the individuals that are appearing in front of me. And it's not that they don't like us. They have, I mean, it's not personal to us, it's that they themselves have their hands full. And we're worrying about one prisoner to them in a cell who needs a hearing at a specific time, to assign one of their jailers to that task. It just doesn't always happen. And so we are calling them and often not getting response until the next day. So that is one of the issues with that. The other issue with that is we really face, and I don't know the answer to this, so Ron will give it, but we bring people to these county jails, like in Devils Lake or in Botno or in Grand Forks, and they bond out. We always are stuck with this issue of, okay, so are we gonna bond them out of the Devils Lake jail and they walk out of the Devils Lake jail and that's the end? Or do we have an obligation to go and pick them up and bring them back here for them to bond out? I'll be honest with you, that is a decision that I make based a lot of times on the circumstances of people. Because we have a lot of people that are sitting in jail in Devils Lake that do not have a car. They don't have a way, we have to send somebody to go pick them up to bring them back. And there's always that tension about that, because if they have family that's willing to go pick them up and post a bond at the Devils Lake jail or at the Botno jail or at the Rolla jail or wherever, I mean, that's fine. But if we don't have that, we're sending people to go pick them up again too and bring them back. And that's a really, to me, that's a serious problem, because it's, again, we're taking our law enforcement officers out of our county doing that type of work. And so the jail plans that I saw are intended to help us prevent that problem here, so that if we're housing somebody from another county, the jail plans would allow there to be video conference rooms and things like that, so that somebody's paying us to keep one of their inmates. We have the ability to get somebody into a room and not have it take so much jailer time actually. So that's.
Thank you. Ron.
Judge, can you maybe estimate how many times a prisoner has to be transported? Once we put them in a facility, how many times they need to come back for hearings, and then ultimately, when they're done, at some point, we would have to go pick them up?
Well, yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, it's an initial appearance. Well, it's a bond hearing, then it's an initial appearance, and it's a arraignment for a preliminary hearing if that's necessary, and more than likely it is, because if we're holding somebody, it's more than likely a felony, pretrial conference and a trial. So there's a lot of transporting, and we do try really hard. We try really hard to get some of that stuff done by Zoom. But if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
So they have to be transported for each one of those events.
Well, they should, let me put it to you this way, they're entitled to demand that. They're entitled to demand an in-person, and that they be in the courtroom and that they be with their attorney in the courtroom. So I always have to ask people when they're appearing by Zoom if do they understand that right? And are they willing to waive that right to appear in person and to appear with their attorney? But, you know, we've come a long way in Zoom and everybody kind of getting more used to that. And so it's very typical, although I just recently had somebody say, oh, I need to see my attorney. I want to be with my attorney. I want to be here in person, and it ends up with a delay, you know, then because you have to get their attorney here and then we have to do an order for transport, and there's just a lot of rigmarole, so to speak. We do it, but it's not efficient, that's for sure. So,
Listening to all this transporting and everything else, I said, you know, if we don't build, our building problem goes away, but our money problem increases. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. Yep, yeah, I mean, I looked at the bottom numbers and yeah, they might change or whatever, but the numbers we're looking now, there's $20 million difference roughly in 20 years. And like you said, at the end of it, we don't own anything. So after 20 years, we're still paying. In 20 years, we're done paying, the jail will be paid off hopefully and everything. After 20 years, we're still at the hands of somebody. And we got a $12 million building sitting on here that's gonna go to heck. You know, I don't know how good that one's gonna be built. I'm sure it's gonna have to be the specs and everything else, but I don't know, in the long run, when I listen to you, how many transports and everything else, and you know, that's just the Grand Forks. What about the ones we got in Williston or Devil's Lake or whoever? You think about if, yeah, we could go to Fargo. Well, Fargo's already taken theirs across state. So that isn't gonna help or improve. So I guess I always say there's no win, but there is a win just to save the taxpayers money, and I think it's building.
Danny,
Guess it comes down to, do you wanna control your own destiny at 42 million? Or let somebody else control it at 60?
I would say too that there just was a study done by the National State Court Administrator in Reno. The valid study that covers all of the states, and they just released their records that per capita, North Dakota judges carry the highest criminal caseload in the nation per capita.
wow.
All right, so, and of course, that's true because I know how much time I'm spending doing the criminal work. And there's always been this shift, there's shifting all the time in how we are supposed to manage that. In terms of the number of beds that are available in the state, the number of beds that are available at the penitentiary, the number of beds we were here. When I started, we used to cram 40 people into that jail and it was full all the time.
Can you repeat that? How many people?
We used to have about 40 people
40.
in that jail all the time, and it was full.
And how long ago was that?
That was,
Before I took over, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it just, that's just the way it was. We don't have that anymore. And I'm not saying that I think that that's bad, because I make my decisions on bond based on mostly community safety. That's the big issue that always comes forward. And there's a push from the state to try to get us to adopt all of these general bond conditions, also that everything's the same everywhere. That doesn't work here. That doesn't really work here. Because we know our people, or we don't know them. And either of those things matter. Those things do matter when we're looking at under all the factors that the court can consider when it sets bond. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a phone call in the middle of the night. We just arrested this person. We don't have a bed. The bond conditions require, you know, that they post, you know, $2,000. They don't have $2,000. And I can't find a place for them in Rugby, in whatever. What do you want me to do, Judge? And I'm making a call kind of on the spur of the moment. And a decision like that is practical. It's practical. And in that, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And That's really not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that everybody, you know, is treated the same. We ran into this problem when we couldn't have women in our jail anymore. And it turned out that COVID took care of that problem. Because of COVID, there's no more work release. But that was a big issue. When we couldn't have women here anymore, male prisoners could have work release. So they could work, women couldn't, because they're not even here. That was a big deal for me. Well, now they've gotten rid of work release altogether because of COVID. But you know what? Work release needs to come back. We need work release. And I'm hoping that it will. It's not something we can even consider now at this point in time, but I mean, there's all those types of factors to consider also, where things are changed when people are being housed right here in our community.
Paul?
I have a couple of questions. So you said in the past, we had 40 prisoners in this facility. I'm assuming we don't now because we can't,
Right,
because of the state
yes.
requirements.
That is correct.
So they've, sometime in the last 10 years or so, they've started enforcing these restrictions?
I would say it's been more like 15, but
15,
yes. There's,
I don't think it's a matter of enforcement either. I think it's a matter of, that the restrictions have changed,
correct.
you know? I mean, I'll be frank with you, when I first became a state's attorney back in like 1994, they were still giving people alcohol in the jail. If they arrested somebody on a weekend and the person had a serious alcohol problem, I don't know that they did it down here, but they certainly did it in Pembina County. They would give the person the alcohol to avoid them having the DTs, to have to take them into the doctor until they could get for the judge on Monday. I mean, it just, you know, it's just a totally different mindset now. And when Ms. Birch was the head of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, she had a very different philosophy about law enforcement and jailing, and that's when all that started. And then all of a sudden, all of these little jails were getting all these deficiencies. They would come in and, just to pick them apart, because their philosophy was that people don't need to be in a local jail, they need to be out and having community service. They are not community service, getting community services post arrest, the pre-trial, and then something afterwards.
TPS.
And it just, it's not been successful, and I can only speak about Pembina and Walsh counties because that's where I'm from. But I think, don't print this. I think I know who needs to stay and who needs to go. I'm not always accurate, but I think I know, regardless of what it says on paper, whether or not this person is safe out in our community. And I am restricted because we don't have the beds, and I'm balancing that against how far they have to be transported, where they're gonna be transported, I mean, it just happens. Yes, Paul.
I have another question, for the judge. Are there people that should be in jail currently that are not?
Well, that's a can of worms. Are you talking pre-trial or post-trial?
Well, I'm just saying, in a perfect world, if you had 40 beds over there, would there be more people in there?
There would be.
Okay, that's
Ron.
I think it comes down to, and thank you, Judge, for that. Comes down to, do we want to be making those decisions at 2 or 3 in the morning? For our deputies and judge to try and make that decision at 2 or 3 in the morning, or do we want the ability to control who should go into jail by having our own facility, taking care of the people and our citizens locally? And that new facility would do that. to the judge's point, work release, I agree with Judge. If these guys and gals are out working, they're not causing trouble in our jail. If they're have the ability to pay for their kids, their wife, their fines, they should be out working. And we just currently don't have the room for a work release facility. But we do in this new facility. There's one that we can exclude them from general population, put them in their own area where we don't have to worry about contraband coming in. Contraband.
Or another pandemic where you can keep them separate.
Or a pandemic, yes. A flu or yes, a very good point. So I think that takes care of a lot of issues. Contraband in our jails are a huge problem. They're gonna put stuff and try and bring it into the jail. It's something we fight with on a constant basis.
It's funny when she talked about how it's changed. When Lauren was still here, I was a portfolio holder, and I'll never forget, we didn't pass the audit or whatever you wanna call it. We were put on probation for, it was quite a long time, like 6 months to a year.
It was.
Wasn't it longer?
It was 18 months.
18 months?
Yes.
So I don't, with all the changes and everything else, I don't wanna go back to that stuff either. You got more control here and everything else, and I agree, times are changing and just, it is what it is.
I just want to bring in a little bit of my healthcare background. So I worked at the hospital, Unity Medical Center in Grafton here, and it's different, right? I mean, bringing alcohol to a prison, they used to smoke in hospitals, I mean, that was like, what, 40, 50 years ago, but you just think like, wow, how far we've come. But 20 years ago, when I worked as a nurse in the hospital and I would be in the emergency room, we were making those calls too, sometimes in combination with police officers, trying to find mental health care, all of the things where, look what the hospital did, right? And from just looking at beds, like it was obviously different, but the same. It was very difficult to find places to put people. And that is a very different classification system, but not totally, right? You're what can we help? What can we keep here versus what needs to go? And it never happens at 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then when I think of work release, I think if we have a kitchen and we have a capable kitchen, you could have prisoners that could be helping feed the rest of the jail, making these people, giving them purpose, using their talents, they've got them.
Also brings our laundry service back to the jail, where currently we're having to sub that out because our laundry service is not, we have water leaking when we have the washing machine going because of the pipes. So yes, there's a ability to have a lot of those jobs done by inmates, yes.
Paul.
Ron, I had a question about operating costs. At our last meeting, I believe it was you that said it would cost us about $260. Run the one we have.
Correct.
But you said that number was offset by something, and I don't remember what that was.
That's offset by the savings that we would have from housing and other facilities. So we take that.
What you're currently housing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
The money we're using to house in another facility, we would recapture that, it would cost us another $260,000 on top of that.
Is that assuming you're not taking anyone else's prisoner?
That is correct.
So if you take someone else's prisoners, for example, you have 20 of your own, you have 40 beds. You could take 10 other prisoners from other counties, and that would help offset the $260,000 increase in operating?
Yes, we could get those contracts with the US Marshals that have been hounding me for bed space. The state penitentiary, the local people that have got no place else to take their people, the trail counties.
But that's not why you're building this.
That is not why I'm building it, that's correct.
The one thing I'd like to add to that is when we testified on both bills at legislature, each time we were asked, would you be willing to take our prisoners? If we pass these bills, would you be willing? if we have room at the end, I guess,
Yeah,
you know,
it's really eye-opening to me that you held 40 people in that place.
And, yeah, what they did, it was called a boat. It was a plastic canoe looking thing. You put a mattress in it, you slid into the cell. And you double, triple bunk people. It is, wherever you had room, there were people sleeping. That can't happen today, but, it did happen then, and we had, back in the day, it wasn't ideal, I'll say that. There were a lot of fights, but, it was what we did back then, and it worked. So yes, when they took us from 23 beds, or, well, there was an exception, right? We had more than 23, but then they took us from 23 down to 16. And that's what really kneecapped us. That's what really hurt us. And when we started to have to look for other beds.
And if I may.
yes, please, Judge.
The other thing that I think that we need to consider, and of course, I'm coming at it from a, on the criminal, cases on that side, that the thing that is the most effective in jurisprudence is immediate consequence. I mean, that's just the truth. And we don't have the ability oftentimes to do immediate consequence because we don't have the space to do the immediate consequence. And, so it doesn't always mean, I mean, post trial, post conviction, when they are being sent to the North Dakota State Penitentiary. I mean, could we meet till 1 o'clock for me to tell you about how my sentences mean nothing at the North Dakota State Penitentiary? They mean nothing. They are in and out within 60 to 90 days all the time, whether I send them there for 60 days or whether I send them there for 6 years. It's just, it means nothing. But my local jail, my sentence means something. And oftentimes, 20 days local time can be a lot more effective than 90 days at the state pen. 20 days local time is not easy time. I know people think that, but it's not. And at the state penitentiary, you know, it's a different setup and a different philosophy. And the idea is not that 20 days local time that we're supposed to put them on balls and chains and all of those things. The idea is that if we can get attention, get their attention. And this is what's facing you if this doesn't stop immediately, and there's an immediate consequence if you are violating our 24/7 sobriety monitoring program. There's an immediate consequence for that. That is, I think, much more of an effective deterrent. And I just think the thought of trying to get these people transported to other places rather than right here is just not, I just don't think it's realistic.
Ron?
Most of the serious time that the inmates are gonna do are going to be done in the county jail. So, it is, we've had instances where there's been 2.5-year sentences that are out in 14 days. So, if we don't have the place to put them in our local jails, this is going to be a revolving door, and it takes the ability away to control what we want to do on a local level.
Well, I think I've sat here long enough listening to all this. I think I'm ready to vote. I don't know if we can have much more input to it. The information this morning, I guess it really didn't change my mind, but it sure clarified a lot of things for me. It just seems like Walsh County needs a jail.
Well, with that, do I have a motion to call for a referendum to construct a new jail with up to a 20 mil property tax increase and up to a 0.75% sales tax increase.
I will make that motion.
Do I have a second? Is there any further discussion?
I have one question. For the judge, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. If you don't wanna answer it, that's fine. If you can't answer it, that's fine. But I'm curious. I asked if there were other people who would be in jail if you had 40 beds here. Would you dare place a number on it? And if you can't answer that, I understand, but.
No, I don't think I can answer it. I'll be honest with you. It's the situations that occur in the middle of the night that are the ones that are the scariest. Because I really don't have a state's attorney there. I don't have a criminal history. I don't have the information about how long the person has been in the area. Where are they working? What are they doing? It's a panic from the law enforcement officer saying it's 3 o'clock in the morning. This person just broke into, we caught him breaking into a farm building and I don't have a place for him. What am I supposed to do? And the way, it might have been a while ago that I might have just been able to say, well, just hold them. Hold them until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And we'll get the state attorney involved and I'll see them right away. Can't do that anymore. They won't allow it. If we don't have the space, you cannot do that. I mean, they even get hung up when we are transporting people from faraway jail here. And I can't, they get here at 10 in the morning and then I can't see them for whatever reason until 3 in the afternoon. That's even becoming an issue.
It counts against our numbers, yes.
Yeah. Wait.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, if there's no further questions, I will take roll. Denny,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carried. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank
Thank
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day.
I think
Thank you.